earth sciences.
Right, but wasn't he also teaching one of
He
the
was.
hard
No, they did
sciences?
add that. Yeah,
Yeah.
he did add that. They
Yeah.
did that.
He's
Right?
got
Yeah.
two.
And AP classes as well. So yeah, he's been there. He's been there a long time. I knew him when he was a young teacher. Now he's a seasoned teacher.
Yeah. And he's a friend of the faith, and he's a friend of the Sustainable Resource Committee. And he's more and more partnering, wanting to partner with us, which is a really great sign. So he's in British Columbia this evening, or he would be with us. But he asked us to share his message. So before we say goodbye, we can do that.
So he's also, he's has something to do with the climate. Well, he's been participating. There's an active climate group that meets regularly in Falls City, and he doesn't have some office or something with that now.
Well, yeah, I think he's hi Farah. Nice to see you. Yes, he said he was on the board, and that's an organization I know close to nothing about. I keep trying to contact them, and it doesn't seem to work out. So I only know what Andrew says, and he mentioned that he was on the board and meets with them on Monday nights. So, but how great is that? That more and more people are working in Little Falls City. We have 2 or 3 households, so that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we well 7:03. So we can I think you all know that Rick Green is our speaker tonight, and he has a wonderful knowledge. He not only it lives in the area and works professionally in the healthcare business, but he and his wife have a farm in Snoqualmie Valley as well. So busy that I don't know how he even has time to share with us tonight, but he's going to be our featured speaker, and he really knows his subject really, really well. So we're so glad that you are going to be able to help us understand agricultural. Hi, Anna. So nice to see you. This is Anna Smithwick. This is Crystal's mom.
Hi, Anna.
And she's
Nice
here.
to see you, Anna.
Being cold, her and her husband's home is in Hawaii, but she's spending some time here. You don't have your coat on.
I was cooking, so I got a little hot, but I may have to go rescue my jacket in a minute.
Did you bring something to share with us?
What? I don't have any. I don't have anything to share.
You said you were cooking.
Well, we have shoyu chicken and fried rice.
Ooh,
But,
sounds good.
Yeah, but I don't know what it tastes like. We haven't eaten it yet. It's all hit and miss, you know.
And her husband Tom is there in the corner of my view anyway. Hi, Tom.
Yeah, I'm here.
So we have people from
He's cold.
and King North in Hawaii, and we have Hawaii in Kirkland. So
Yeah.
all mixed up.
And she's always bragging about how warm it is there.
Yeah. Yes,
So should we begin?
I think so.
Probably.
Okay, good. All right. And you have shared, allowed me to share screen. Go. Good.
Hi, Marianne.
If you need to do anything, Rick, let me know. I haven't disabled or enabled anything for you.
Okay. And when we play the video, have you also highlighted the area for sharing sound and optimizing the video clip?
Yeah, I'll check I'll be sure to check both those.
Okay, very good. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes,
All
It's
right.
not, it's not
Very
full
nice.
screen though, Rick. We're seeing a tiny screen like you have two screens maybe.
Uh-oh.
You have to share one screen, not somehow sharing both.
Can I interrupt a minute? Is this going to be recorded so that I can come back to it because we're having some issues here and I may need to go. Is that possible? Is it
It is being
recorded?
recorded,
I can-
yes. Yes, it is
Yes.
being recorded.
Okay. Okay. So I may need.
So, are you seeing the whole screen yet or no?
No, we still see two screens. Your the main home page or the main welcome, and then we see a tiny land acknowledgement. So if you have two screens, I think there's a way to share one screen versus the other by selecting.
How about now?
we're seeing the people, the gallery.
Yeah, just people at the moment.
There we go.
There we go.
Got it now?
Yeah, it looks
Yep.
like a single screen. We can see a little bit of your desktop. Oh, perfect.
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 All right. I just can't see all your beautiful faces now. Well, thank you all for coming this evening. It's so nice to be with you all. And I wanted to give you a warm welcome on behalf of the Sustainable Resource Committee of Baha'is of King County North, and wanted to share with you some thoughts and ideas and reflections on a vision that's called Vision 2050, and then even more fully, a Vision 2050, a prairie foods system. In a little bit, we'll get more into that, what all of that means. But before we get started, I would like to do a land acknowledgement and to thank all of the people, the indigenous peoples of this region, and both those who might be here with us in this world, as well as those who have passed. And just to let them know that we are grateful to be able to meet here today, surrounded by such natural beauty, and that we respect and acknowledge that we are on the indigenous land of the coastal Salish people, who have reserved the treaty rights to this land, and specifically the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. And we thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial. As Baha'is, we reflect upon the teachings given to us to the global West more than 100 years ago by Abdul Baha, when he advised to attach great importance to the indigenous population of America. And he said that there would be no doubt that there would come a time when the indigenous folks of America, the American continent, would become so illumined as to enlighten the whole world. So we warmly welcome and honor our indigenous brothers and sisters. Also like to acknowledge the holy ones and spiritual teachers who were sent to these lands by our Creator, and the nations and kindreds who are the custodians of their sacred trust, who work to restore peace and justice upon this blessed land. So thankfulness and gratitude to all those who are with us in person and in spirit. So this sharing this evening will be about a prairie food system vision. Now, when we hear the prairie food system vision, it's talking about the prairies of southern Canada and the south central Canada. And the theme, if you will, throughout the whole vision that we will be learning about this evening in the First Nations language is pronounced Kwea Iskastosuan Wakatoan, which means making things right. And recognizing that everyone and everything is related. So appreciating that there is an interrelatedness between all created things. So we might say that the purpose of this evening is to do a learning and a reflection on the prairie food system vision, and to have a meaningful conversation in the spirit of sustainability and regeneration of the earth. How might the systems approach that we will learn from this presentation, how that might relate to the Snoqualmie Valley? Is there anything that we can learn from the work that the friends have done in Canada? How might that apply here? Is there anything we can take from their learning and apply to our local valley? And then how do we continue this conversation from this evening and transition into lines of action? So taking from a little bit higher view, let's talk about how this even started. How did this Vision 2050 food system start? Back in 2020, the Rockefeller Foundation, their research, and as they began to investigate many of the populations and systems of food production throughout the world, they came to recognize that there was really a lack of a positive vision for food production currently, as well as no evidence of anything moving into the future. And so this whole project that they began was a project that would inspire and bring hope, if you will, to the populations of the world on how do we prepare? How do we begin to create the transformations that are necessary to be able to produce the food that will be needed for an ever-growing population of the world, not only for today, but into the future? And so what they did is they started this, I don't know that we would call it a competition, but a challenge, if you will, a challenge for a food system vision prize. And that one would be for a population that would arise to create, would you say, a vision set forth with a plan and lines of action that would allow a community, their own local community, to become self-sustainable and to be concerned truly about the sustainability and the regeneration, if you will, of the communities in which they reside. And the interrelatedness, not only of the region that they're in, but how this also relates to the rest of the world. And so with this challenge put forth, there were 1,300 applicants from 119 countries. And out of those 1,300 applicants, there was 10 prize winners, 10 finalists, if you will, given for having produced, if you will, not only a project, but a plan and lines of action of how to, in their local area, to carry forward this vision of creating a sustainable and regenerative process for food production. And the areas that all of the applicants were asked to focus on were 6 areas. And those areas were the environment, the diets of the people and the lands in which they live, the economics of the system, the culture, the technology, and the policy, while at the same time showing how all of these are integrated, how all of them are related to each other. And so now what we would like to do is we'd like to take a moment to watch a video. And this video was produced that is sort of like a narrative, a visual narrative of this project of the prairie food system, specifically the area that we will be looking at this evening. Now, for your own interest, all of the 10 finalists have videos that are easily accessible online. And I would encourage you, if you have a time, to look at those, because they are very, very enlightening, and much work, planning, time, and consultation of not only the teams that created these visions, but how they have had to reach out to the communities, to the government, and so forth. So Aaron, I'm going to stop sharing screen, and if you would, bring that video up.
Okay, very good. So if you would just give me a thumbs up if everything is going swimmingly well as it starts, that would be awesome.
Looks good.
Mhm.
People were simply just beat off their land base.
Our systems for agriculture fell apart, and they tried to bury us. And they didn't realize we were the seed when they buried us. (1491) before European contact. Most indigenous nations on the continent here were agriculturalists and growers. They grow corn, beans, and squash. And then European diseases wiped out 90% of the population by the early 1700s. We were put on reservations, and the non-indigenous people were given all the rest of the land. The systems for agriculture fell apart. The Western diet is not suitable for First Nations. We're eating a lot of flour and a lot of things we shouldn't be eating. We haven't got the enzymes to break down properly. But the food and the plants are our medicine.
This province became an entity in 1905, and of course there were various treaties written, and certain conditions were put forward for welcoming the settler. And to date, a lot of those conditions have not been met. And people were simply just beat off their land base. You know, the indigenous farmers on the land were just taken off the land. How can you be food secure if your traditional homeland's been taken away from you?
We have a relationship with the land, we have a relationship with the animals, we have a relationship with the plants, we have a relationship with the settlers, and we need to set that relationship right again.
My name is Marla Carlson. I'm the Executive Director at Sask Organics. We're the industry association for certified organic farmers and processors in Saskatchewan. One of the things that makes our team a little bit different is that we're a loose network of people who work in different areas that are covered by our vision. We have academics, and we have people working in agriculture, environmentalists, conservationists. We have people across the board. And that's, I think, one of the real strengths of our vision is that it is looking at all of the different aspects that create food sovereignty.
They signed the treaties with the First Nations not expecting that we would make it into the 20th century. And they tried to bury us. And they didn't realize we were the seed when they buried us, tried to bury us.
One of our solutions is to develop what we're calling a solutions lab. And what the solutions lab allows is people to gather together to come up with solutions for local food systems.
Well, we're educating our young people on how to grow their food and how to take care of themselves. My job is to facilitate that education. This whole garden here was planted by the students of our school here. We grew 2 acres of potatoes and another acre of corn, beans, squash. We planted some raspberries, strawberries. We're planting some hash caps. We're starting a food forest. 99% of our students have never planted a seed before in their life until this year. We should be eating the foods that our ancestors gave us and taught us how to grow and how to use and how to have a relationship with.
So a regenerative model of agriculture is to ensure that our air is clean and our water is drinkable and the land is regenerated. The idea is that if we have healthy soil, we have healthy plants and we have healthy people.
The role of people in their own food production is missing right now. We need to be much more closely tied to our food system so that we recognize that when we destroy something in the process of creating our food, we realize that we have just destroyed something and something needs to change.
A lot of my students that I teach were, farmers. And now a lot of the family farms have disappeared with the very controlling factors of corporate agriculture. So we have a crisis, and we figure that the best people to help solve it are the ones on the ground.
I started the Vegetable Academy while operating our own farm here. People wanting to grow their own food at home come to me with questions, and the Vegetable Academy provides them with the tools, the resources, and our growing methods that they can use at home to grow their own food more successfully, with more confidence, and with less time. There's no shipping required. There is no large-scale machinery required, and the quality is superior because we're taking it fresh off the vine and right into our homes.
Children do well with candid, authentic truth. They know if you're telling them something that's real or not. My goal is to, teach an ecologically literate generation and then have that translate into land practices. So this location is called Brightwater Science, Environmental and Indigenous Learning Center. It's quite a vision. There's 160 acres that the children get to explore. We have about 4,000 students a year.
We cannot look at the state of the land without looking at the state of the family, without looking at the state of the community, without looking at food insecurity. So it's all connected. It's all linked together. And if we can crack the code on one, it strengthens that whole list of issues.
We've been a loose collection of individuals, and we've been developing relationships, and now it feels like we're taking that next step and formalizing the organization and working on creating the Solutions Lab. And I think by reimagining a food system where everybody has access to healthy, nutritious, affordable food, there will be a level of respect and understanding that we don't have right now. Food is just so central to who we are that if we can focus on food, the rest will follow. I think for me, what I have been learning in the process is that I really need to educate myself. There's definitely that reconnection to the land, and between Indigenous people and settlers, a recognition that we are all treaty people.
Setting things right. Wagotuwin, all our relations. For the long term, I would hope that we grow enough culturally appropriate food to meet all our needs and to live a better life in peace with our neighbors. Setting that relationship right, I believe, is what we need for reconciliation.
People were
Back to you, Rick.
Can you see my full screen?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so we're all going to practice now. We're all going to practice how to say Kwea kastosuwen wakatoen. Let's all do it together. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Quea askatosoen. Wakatoen.
Wakatoen.
Queas castasoen.
Wakatoen.
Wakatoen, okay.
And what does that mean?
Making things right.
Uh-huh.
For all our relations.
Yes, for all our relations. And is our relations just our uncles and our aunts and our brothers and our sisters and our nieces and nephews?
All systems, all aspects of community.
Yeah, including
Land,
land. What else?
Animals.
Animals.
environment.
Everything, yeah.
Animals.
All our relations. All our relations. Good. So this new narrative that the First Nations people are taking a look at is really the center of this whole project, this whole plan that they have created. It's from this perspective, it's through this lens that they are seeing this vision to be able to move forward to creating a sustainable and regenerative food system. And if you take a look at this narrative, where it has this circular movement, of you will, not that one of them is to come first, but rather, again, showing the interrelatedness between all of these things. I'm going to ask different people to each read one of these. Mary, can you read the first one about healing the land?
Healing the land, supporting high-functioning ecosystems, restoring grasslands, parklands, and wetlands.
Mm-hmm. And Charlotte, can you read the next one below it?
People-centered food systems, local, diverse, community-centered, revitalizing rural areas.
Mm-hmm. Great. And Alan, could you read the one below it?
Realizing a vision, a 30-year project. Strengthening network structures, identifying signals and trends, starting a social innovation lab.
Thank you. And Farah, can you read the next one, going around to the left?
Sorry, farm prosperity through agroecology. Farms are internally optimized. Producer at center, not supplier.
Mm-hmm. And Saba, could you read the one above it?
A little bit too small, but I'll try. Restoring traditional systems, food sovereignty, treaty land sharing.
Mm-hmm. And Alice, could you read the one above it?
Reconciliation among peoples. We are all treaty people. Decolonization opens new possibilities.
Mm-hmm. So let's spend a few moments. Sort of reflecting on this slide. At first, it seems really simple, huh? But it's actually quite involved. So let's take a look at some of these things. Why might these things that are listed here be important in creating a food system which is both sustainable and regenerative?
One of the things that occurs to me is it doesn't involve competition.
Uh-huh.
It involves cooperation and recognition.
Right.
And these all have to exist. You can't just pull one out. They all have to be present.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the things that stands out for me, I've seen this before, is the statement, "We are all treaty people."
Uh-huh.
Like, I mean, it's just an awareness that whether we recognize it or not, we are treaty people.
What do you feel like they were meaning by that statement?
That there were treaties, there were agreements, and that we're all obligated to honor those agreements.
Mm-hmm.
That just by virtue of the fact that we are here, and that we have the responsibility to ensure that those treaties are recognized and enforced.
Right. Yeah.
And there has to be the cooperation. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, please, go ahead.
Well, and when that happens, then there is a cooperation between people. When those things are honored, there's a trust and the cooperation that has to exist for these for a sustainable environment to exist.
Mm-hmm.
I was also thinking of the treaty as like a covenant, that as human beings, we are to take care of the land and each other. So
Yeah.
it's a covenant between humans and God and the Creator and
Yeah.
all of that. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and also that the treaty just doesn't apply to the indigenous population. It applies to the colonizers as well, because
Right.
both groups signed those treaties.
Right.
And traditionally the colonizers were the ones that broke the treaties.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to recognize that piece as well.
Mhm.
Right. So we remember the gentleman, Monroe, how he said that one of the parts of this healing is that the relationships need to be made right amongst all parties. And so he was referring to this reconciliation that was necessary between the indigenous people and the colonizers, if you will, those who created this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the concepts of this 2050 vision is the decolonization
Right.
of these regions. And it's this process that is the beginning of the healing, if you will, of the land and of the people and all other related things. So anything else anyone would like to mention about this? Anything mentioned on this slide before we move on?
It sort of reminds me of the word that the Universal House of Justice often use, the protagonist, and your participation in what we are doing, as opposed to very large corporations doing this, which is, I guess, it could be okay so long as people feel like they have a strong stake in what they are doing and into their food. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we will see later as we go deeper into this plan that one of those 6 areas of focus that every one of the populations who put forth the vision, that one of the things that they had to address was policy, right? And so policy not only deals with local government and institutions, but also regional, state, and national governments, because there's an interrelationship at all levels. So this vision, if you will, the Prairie Food System Vision, was created specifically in the area that was referred to as Canada's Treaty 4 territory. If we were to look at the colonized areas, ones that maybe we're familiar with by name, That would be like British Columbia and Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and those areas surrounding that group. And so in Canada, the Treaty 4 territory, they're really feeling like the colonization is what highly affected the native peoples in being able to produce food the way that they saw food. They not only saw it as something to nourish the body, but they actually recognized their food also as medicine. And so it was this process of colonization that interrupted that natural cycle that was taking place for them. And so one of the things that they are focusing on is not only the decolonization, but what does it actually mean to have food sovereignty? And what does it mean to assist with regeneration of the earth? And so when we hear the word food sovereignty, what does that mean to us?
I think it means control over the way the food is produced and managed and distributed and all of those things. They have the growers have control.
Yes. Very good. And when we hear the term regenerative agriculture, what does that mean to us? When we hear that term, that concept, regenerative agriculture, that's a word that's used a lot today. What, in our understanding, what's the meaning of that term?
Does that mean not depleting the land of the organic health as we farm it for produce?
Yeah. So in the positive affirmative of that, it's doing everything we can to build its health, right? Everything we can do to build the soil and to investigate all of the different methods, if you will, from both a traditional as well as scientific method of what is the best way to do that? Is there a best way? Are there multiple ways? And might it be different in one area versus another? Is there different ways that are necessary for a regenerative method of agriculture to be carried forth? And is it the same for every region, or is it different? So these are all things that can be looked at. And so one of the other aspects that they are looking at is not only increasing their own knowledge, but also involving the youth, the education of the children and the youth in this process and understanding of sustainability and regenerative agriculture. So this is a look, if you will, at this geographic area that we're talking about. We can see the Treaty 4 area, the Treaty 4 territory is involving that area that's encircled, but it's really reaching out. When you begin to study and read the system that they're already beginning to implement, they are finding that it's far reaching. It's beginning to affect the whole area around them because of all of the communications with government, policymakers, and so forth. So these 6 areas, these 6 interconnected areas that are being talked about is the environment, the economy, the culture, technology, policy, and diet. And so these are the 6 areas that all of the applicants were asked to address in their plan and lines of action that they were to carry forward. So if we could take turns and begin to read around this circle, and we can go whichever direction we like, but if Marianne, if you wouldn't mind reading one of those, and then if you could choose someone else in the group to read whichever next one they would like to read.
Okay. I'm looking on my tiny cell phone. Okay. Culture. The landscapes of our making match and reflect society's cultural inscapes.
Yeah.
How about Mary?
Policy. The central place in every culture should be occupied by agriculture.
And you choose someone, Mary?
Oh yeah, I forget. I'm still looking at it going, oh my gosh. Aaron.
Environment. The proper use of land poses not a technical nor an economic problem, but primarily a metaphysical problem. Alan.
Technology. The overall vision for technology cannot come from technology itself. It must be informed by essential ideas or ideals, spiritual insight, and participatory practice that promotes the common good. Richard.
Diets. Eating is an agricultural act. Alice.
Economy. Sustained agriculture means maintenance first, attending to the health of the soil, water, plants, and animals, ahead of attention to yield and production.
So let's have a little discussion around each of these. Let's pick any one that we like. Would anyone like to start and begin to share what comes to mind when they read that little phrase under the area of focus?
They're all very interesting, of course. But the policy one, I'm perhaps more curious than have any particular insight, but you know, talking about the central place in every culture being occupied by agriculture. So I'm not sure, is that talking about geography as a central place of a cultural region? Or is it beyond, is it something more than that?
Wonderful question. Wonderful question.
Well,
What's our understanding of that?
Yeah, I took it as not geographical in nature, but as the emphasis of the culture, rather than a capitalism or those kinds of efforts. That the real cultural shift needs to be toward the agriculture and making that the primary goal of the society or whatever. My goodness, what a change that would be, especially in this country.
Yeah.
But I can see how that could really drive a change in society as itself. Would change a whole lot of the societal interrelations with each other.
How many people have never had the opportunity or taken the opportunity to grow a food of any kind? I think it's pretty safe to say, in my day-to-day practice, I've had the opportunity to work on lots of teachers and in the school system. And they said, you would be surprised when they begin to talk about food and production of food, how many children have no concept of where food comes from, other than the grocery store. And so this process of policy, of being central, agriculture being the center of community, Abdu'l-Baha says in his writings that everyone should be a producer. Those are the words of Abdu'l-Baha. He says everyone should be a producer. Why might that be? Why would we all be asked to, at least in some way, produce?
Well, and my thought is about that is that if you're dealing with agriculture and your goal is to be a producer, you're in agreement with you can't just take. You need to be in a cooperative agreement with the land and the plants and the seeds. And that builds that sense of relationship, using the words of the vision, builds that sense of relationship, because you can't just take. But now we can go to the grocery store or some other place and just take. We just buy, and then we take, but we don't reinvest in the soil that's producing it.
And so with that, continuing on with that thought, what might be a highlight or a characteristic of regenerative agriculture versus maybe more commonplace commercial cropping or corporate agriculture?
Or meat animals, how corporate America damages the land and doesn't nourish the animal, doesn't create a cycle of taking care of the land. It just decimates it.
Right. So what is our responsibility in that, and how can we affect that? Even if we're not the person who raises it, how can we be involved in that decision-making process?
By buying from local farms.
Yeah.
Yeah, supporting the local.
And farms that we know that are using regenerative methods. Farms that we know are using regenerative methods. Another thing that came to mind when I reflect on Abdu'l-Baha's words that everyone should be a producer, one of the things that comes to my mind is the relationship of gratitude and thankfulness. If you've ever tried to grow something, and actually grow enough to feed yourself, you find that sometimes it can be a real challenge, right? Between the weather, the pests, the things that you have no control over, right? Things that you have no control over.
The beavers and the chipmunks and squirrels.
Yeah. And so it's, there's this appreciation for the farmer. If you just have a little backyard gardener, you have this sense of appreciation for those who are producing the food that's on your table, to the greater extent. Let's go to another one.
I had a question.
Sure.
What is meant by society's cultural inscapes?
Would someone like to respond to that question? As you read that, what sort of comes to you?
Are those the cultures that we have created?
Mhm. Seems like they could be. Maybe one of the things that it's speaking to, maybe not all of it, but maybe one of the things that it's speaking to is the landscape that we've created on how we grow food, how we care for the earth.
Yeah.
Is it in alignment? Is it in alignment with a sense of true spiritual stewardship of the land? And so the inscape, the cultural inscape that, for example, how Mr. Monroe in the video, he talked about how they look at food as medicine. That's a cultural aspect, right? So they're looking at it as an actual, not only a physical sustenance, but a spiritual sustenance.
Mm.
And so that's part of culture. And so we have to ask ourselves, are the methods that we're using in our current landscape, are they in alignment? Are they in alignment with a system that is sustainable, a system that is regenerative?
Mhm.
If, for example, we don't feed the soil. So, for example, there are many types of farming that really look at actually much of the year or much of the land that they're growing on, they're actually growing to feed the soil. They're not growing to reap something from it at that moment, but they're actually growing to feed the soil. And so from that very aspect, they're putting back, always giving back and understanding where that true sustenance comes from. But if we're using methods of farming, that are actually detrimental to the earth, not only in the short term, but in the long term, is that sustainable?
Mhm.
And is that the kind of, if we were to carry that over into our relationships with people, talking about a cultural inscape, are the relationships that we have with people only to have gratitude in the moment? Or are we connected at a deeper level where we actually see ourselves as community, and what is necessary to sustain those relationships into the future?
Yeah, according to Merriam-Webster dictionary, inscape is a noun, which means inward significant character or quality belonging uniquely to objects or events in nature and human experience, especially as perceived by the blended observation and introspection of the poet. So it's kind of the overall what the culture is.
Yeah.
But I
Let's
had
go
to
to
look it up.
another. Thank you. Let's go to another one.
Well, I was thinking about the technology. We seem to rely an awful lot on technology to solve all of the problems we encounter. And right there it says you can't do it that way. This technology is not going to solve this challenge. Technology helped create the problem. And so you have to use the technology in a manner which supports what you're actively trying to do rather than relying on the technology itself.
Yeah. So can we think of an example of that? Anyone?
Well, just the huge reliance on herbicides and pesticides. That's all created by technology.
Right.
And there's so much damage caused by that,
Mhm.
along with the good.
Mhm.
So we need to rethink some of the ways we're doing those things to the environment.
Mhm. Yeah.
One of the things that comes to my mind as well is I don't understand that this is actually going to be the way I say it, but I know that technology, the production of technology elements involves water and the cooling of machines. And so in looking at technology, one of the things that we in this balanced 2050 vision, whether or not to build an industry that involves taking too much of the water would be a consideration that they would have.
Mhm.
Well, technology is just, it's a material kind of a thing. And so, you know, when you read that the vision has to be informed by essential ideals, spiritual insight, participatory practices that promote the common good. Well, technology is a tool, but it doesn't have those elements into it, you know, inherent in it. So, you know, technology is useful if it's used correctly, but it's not the answer.
Mm.
I mean, if I'm saying that.
Mhm.
It has to be, this has to be driven by humans making conscious decisions and cooperatively acting for the good of all. Technology doesn't have the capacity to do that.
Mhm. One simple way that you know technology benefits us in terms of water is you know, we know through the study using science and technology, we have now instrumentation that can actually measure saturation of certain areas of the earth. And we're beginning to learn also, we're beginning to learn for certain crops, they require certain levels of saturation, and other crops, maybe lesser levels of saturation, right? And so systematically, we can create irrigation systems. We can create irrigation systems that are utilizing water more efficiently, giving water where water is needed, but not overwatering areas that aren't needed. So technology, by instrumentation, by being able to measure soil saturation, by knowing the plants that we are dealing with, science teaches us that, you know, they need certain amounts of water and so forth. And so if we begin, you know, using that knowledge to benefit how we begin to use irrigation and watering, that has a great effect. How about as it relates to diets? It says eating is an agricultural act.
That's a bold statement.
Uh-huh. What's our understanding of that statement?
That everything we eat comes from the land.
Sure. Hopefully.
Where else?
Hopefully.
Where else would it come from?
Hopefully not from the laboratory.
Where it comes from, yeah.
Well, doesn't that have to do with like mindful eating, making decisions about eating, you know, where your food comes from, where you choose to buy your food, where, you know, being aware of how it's grown, where it's grown, supporting the kind of agriculture that is responsible, that does encourage sustainability, eating, you know, eating as an agricultural act. It supports the agriculture if it's done thoughtfully and responsibly and with intention.
And I think also that kind of reinforces the idea of staying away from heavily processed foods.
Yeah.
You know, reading those labels with so many ingredients that have too many syllables to pronounce and all of those things that, you know, if you've looked at the ingredients of a Twinkie lately or ever, oh my goodness, that's not food. It had parts of food once, but, you know, no longer. So that's not, if you're eating that, it's not agricultural. And I think we need to maybe refocus on that aspect as well.
It's maybe a pretty, some people might think it is a pretty rigid statement, but I remember an instructor back in university, which was just a few years ago. This person said, if it's in a bag, a box, or a can, then it shouldn't be part of your diet. So when I was hearing you say, when you're reading the label on it, so that's already where, if it has to have a label on it, maybe we should be thinking about whether we should be putting it in our body. And that's pretty stringent, but there's some wisdom to that, right? There's some wisdom to that. How about the environment? The proper use of land poses not a technical nor an economic problem, but primarily a metaphysical problem.
I'll be the first to say I don't understand it. A metaphysical problem.
If we were to insert spiritual in there, or metaphysical, and what would happen to our earth if the only thing, and what would happen to our environment if our only motive from our growing was profit motive? How might we grow, and what methods might we use? What methods might we use to fertilize if our motive was profit only?
Well, that's extractive agriculture.
Yes.
That's how this whole video started, is the relationship of humans with the environment, with everything in the environment. So if we recognize that we have this relationship with the land, with the water, with all of the natural world, then that we'd hope that we're inclined then to feel a sense of responsibility. We care for the things that we know and we love.
So that environment and economy, those two areas on that cycle there, are highly interconnected, huh?
Yeah.
It always makes me think about, watched a program on the Dust Bowl, and how when people went into those areas where it was primarily prairie grass that had taken centuries to develop to keep the land intact, And then when they plowed it all up, and then they had that huge drought, the land literally blew away.
Right.
And I mean, I had heard it, but that program really showed you what can happen if you don't have respect for the environment that you're in and realize, what would be best for that area. And it certainly wasn't best to plow up all of the prairie grass and grow wheat and other crops. And then what a huge impact that had on the whole country.
Yes.
So it didn't just affect the area where it happened, it affected the entire country. So I think we have to have respect for the land. And I think that's where we see the indigenous people view the land from a different perspective, as being that we're responsible to take care of the land. And when we take care of the land takes care of us.
Yeah. Wonderful. So how do we say this again? I'm just checking in. So we're going to practice this on our own, right? So the next time we come back together, we can share this with each other. And what does it mean again?
To make things right.
Yeah. And to understand the interrelatedness between all created things. Huh? So I think that there are some other areas that I have prepared, but I think rather than to go through those in this setting, in a Zoom setting, I think it would be more valuable to do these in person and in a group where we were actually sitting down to actually look at lines of action that we would set forth in our community. And under each of these areas of culture, of policy, of environment, of economy, of technology, and of diets, I think that we could go deeper into each and every one of these areas. But I'm not sure that tonight is the space to do that in. So what I would like to do, if we could, is I'm going to stop sharing at the moment here. And what I would like to do is to for us to reflect on some of the things that were talked about in the movie. And can you see my screen now? No? Okay, good.
People.
Okay, good. That's all I want. And so I'd like to just review over some of the conversation that some of the folks shared as they were speaking in the video. And I think for us to reflect on those can be helpful. And in the video, one of the individuals said, we should be eating the foods that our ancestors gave us. We should be eating the foods that our ancestors gave us. Why? Why do you think that was shared by the individual in the movie? From what spirit is that coming from?
Well, one thought comes to me, and that's that if the food grew for our ancestors, and they sustained it over time, then it must be workable with the land and be able to sustain human life as well. So it works. It works for everything. It works for the soil to be regenerated season after season after season. It's not depleted. And likewise, human bodies are not depleted, but they're reinvigorated with the eating and the products that come from the land. That's one thought.
Well, and he also talked about that at least the majority of the indigenous tribes don't have the proper or necessary enzymes to fully digest well, flour for one, wheat flour, and a whole lot of the other things that we've forced them to eat over the last few centuries because we're helping them by providing them food, but it's food they can't eat. So for that group of people, they need to go back to their original diets so that they can be healthy. The rest of us would probably benefit also, although we may not have the enzymes required to digest some of that stuff either because of our the way humanity has changed over the generation. So, but I think for me, listening to that part was very moving because they're not only trying to establish their ancient food, but all of their ancient traditions and lifestyle and living on their lands and all of those things. I think it all goes together.
One of the things that comes to my mind when I listen to that is for that food to still be present, it had to build resilience, right? It had to build resilience from disease. It had to build resilience from the environmental aspects of coming forth. And so it's a strain, if you will, that has survived over millennia. Now scientifically, there's so much genetic manipulation to seeds that are often for seeds that are produced so that they'll have less water, seeds that are produced so that they'll be more resistant to certain disease, seeds that are produced that will germinate quicker and grow to life sooner. So all this genetic manipulation that has gone on, and maybe we've yet to see the effect that has on our bodies. That's something that science is going to reveal to us over time, and maybe we don't yet know the effects of those things. So one of the things that comes to my mind is that if those foods are still in existence, they've had to make it over time. One of the things from a cultural basis I'd like to ask, some of us here are from different cultures, but I would like to ask the question, who has tried to learn about foods from their culture? And do you currently eat specific foods for the, shall we say, the cultural satiety value, or maybe the medicinal value that might come from certain foods that maybe your parents used or their parents used? Just curious.
That's hard. I find that hard to answer because all of my background is Nordic, Northern European German. And so I grew up with that kind of diet, but that's kind of like been the classic white American diet too. I think the meat and potatoes kind of thing. So for me, I don't know. But in terms of trying to really be specific as far as getting into, going way back into, like, say, the Norwegian, what would be a typical Norwegian diet? No, not anything much more than, trying some Norwegian cheeses and some pickled herring and that kind of thing. Loving it, of course, but
in Persian culture, there is quite a bit of connection of food with medicine, as having medicinal value. So there are lots of books about the benefits or the harms of certain things, and when to take things when your body needs it. Unfortunately, we've lived here for so many years that we are not in touch with that part of our culture. But a lot of Persians in Iran, they do use food for medicine, and very effectively. Yeah.
Also very, very rich in the East Indian culture. The roots of Vedic medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, this long history of using food as medicine. Yeah. So maybe that's something we can ponder. Is that something we should be doing? Are there benefits from things that we can grow in our own soil that are to our benefit? I remember before COVID, when flow of friends back and forth from Iran seemed to be more frequent, they would always deliver things to Fatane. What's the flower? It's like a purple flower. Is it Gola Zaban, or is it
Golgav Zaban?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Is that people use for like a respiratory or for like
also
flu
for
or
the
cold?
health of the heart, they say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also the fruit that is it's a small kind of almost looks like a cran apple. Trying to remember the name in Persian. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I'm forgetting. But it's very good for the heart. It's very good for heart health, and actually is commonly used by practitioners who are herbalists or acupuncturists and so forth. Will commonly recommend that remedy for strengthening of the heart.
I don't think I know which one.
It's right on the tip of my tongue, and it's
No. Is it Zeresh?
No. It's like a like the size of a cran apple almost, a small circular fruit.
What color?
If you said it reddish, dark reddish brown, yeah. If you said the name, I would know it. It's just not coming to me right now.
Quince, is
No.
it?
No, it's much smaller than quince.
Much smaller? Okay.
Much smaller than quince, yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of it. We gotta go wake Fatane up.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of commonality between Persian diet and the general Mediterranean diet, especially when it comes to vegetables and yogurt and all these kind of sort of fundamentals.
Right.
Fish, yeah.
Another thing that was mentioned on the movie, one of the people who shared the movie, they said that regenerative living is to ensure that the air is clean, the water is drinkable, and the land is regenerated. So if we have healthy soil, if we have healthy plants, we will have healthy people. Remember I'm saying that? So the question I would like to ask is, what have we ourselves learned about creating healthy soil.
Mhm. Do you mean tonight or over time?
Either.
Okay.
I'm grateful there are no Twinkie bushes.
Oh,
Or you would do your best to keep them alive? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm glad that's not a thing. I don't think that would be healthy or helpful to the planet or the soil or us.
uh,
Well, I think, I'm a city boy,
Huh?
and I've done a little gardening and tried to raise carrots
Mhm.
and potatoes. They're pretty easy. Grew a watermelon once and a pumpkin once, uh, and I reflect on how hard this really is, and the actual farmers are, holy moly, those people are animals to be able to
yeah.
work the earth like that, even with machines. And I'm just, my hat's off. But I think one of the things that the ancient folks did was crop rotation. You didn't grow wheat every year, for instance, or on that patch of land. You didn't grow corn every year on that patch of land. And the way the big corporate farms are doing it is by putting chemicals on the land so that they can grow that same crop over and over and over again. And that's not good for the earth.
Right.
And composting, and all of those kinds of, the good water management and all of those kinds of things. So even in our little backyard gardens, we need to be able to do those sorts of things. Now, I'm currently living in an apartment and I don't have a plot of land, and we're one of the initiatives up here in Everett is that we'd like to see if we can get into the community gardening thing, where if somebody's got a little corner lot or something that they're willing to donate to do that, we want to be involved in that. Haven't found anybody willing to do that yet, but it's on our list, and I think if we can.
When you say you haven't found
those-
anybody willing to do that, meaning?
Turn over the land,
Oh, I see.
turn loose of the land for that.
Have you gone to the local government?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And it's something that we're working on. So
There's a really good video. It's on urban farming, and it's actually quite enlightening about the tonnage the tonnage of waste that is created at the level of the city every day. Just tons upon tons of waste. All we know is the garbage man comes and gets it, right? And it takes it away. And we don't think about it from that point on. But he's dedicating his life to running this local urban farm, and they collect as much as 6 to 8 dump truck loads a day of food waste. And they are continually composting that. And so land that was once you could not grow on, or you would not want to eat the food that was grown on it because of all of the environmental degradative effects of the city life, they're now being able to grow on that land because they're year after year after year, they're building the health of that soil. And so there's some really good videos out there if you want to search on urban farming and the effect that that's having. The reason I bring that up is the one city that they were in, the one that comes to my mind, I can't remember if it's Detroit or
I think it's Detroit.
There's another city. They had I want to say over 12,000 acres that were currently unused by anyone. And so they were working with negotiation with the city to be able to gain access to some of these acres, and then simultaneously creating programs for people who may not have homes to live in, that actually they employ them. And also they have their own food sustenance through these avenues. And so it's some very empowering programs that are going on in that area. Yeah.
One of the things that along this line that I've learned recently is the difference between soil and dirt.
Mm-hmm.
That dirt, say a big commercial farmer, mm-hmm. Takes dirt and adds the chemicals that plants need to grow and to the dirt, and the plants grow from that, but they don't grow in soil. And so one of the things that is missing is this whole network of bugs and worms and tiny hair roots and everything that comes when you have soil that supports life, as opposed to, as Alice was talking about in the Dust Bowl, as opposed to dirt that doesn't support life.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Marianne?
Right.
Yeah. See, Marianne was there when we had that conversation.
Have you heard of the term humus or hummus? And I'm not talking about that part of the Mediterranean diet that you were talking about, Saba, before.
Yes.
Not the thing you eat with chips or pita bread. The part of the soil that actually is the organic matter,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that actually is the sustenance of the soil. That's the network, the holding of that soil. It's that part of the soil that allows it to imbibe water and hold on to water. So that's what was lost when, you know, when they strip the top of the soil. Like a lot of places will go places and they'll strip the top soil and sell that off somewhere else and leave that land, you know, the top of it barren. So they've taken away the fruit of that soil, if you will, its ability to produce, and will take years to build that back up. The good thing is Mother Nature is, if we do begin to tend to and begin practices of sustainability, Mother Nature very quickly will begin to show its appreciation towards us by us appreciating it. But the thing is, you know, how long can we produce the way that we have been producing without having some long-term effect on our Earth? One of the individuals in the movie, the young lady who was the director of that educational institution, she said, "Children do well with candid, organic truth.
Yeah.
My goal is to teach an ecological generation."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
What role do we have? What role do we have as an elder generation to the education of those who come after us? What is our role? What is our responsibility in that aspect?
Being good examples.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think for, you know, if I look at myself, one of the things I've tried to do as I've learned more and more each year, is I've tried to share what I've learned and how I've learned it with my children and grandchildren. The grandchildren tend to be in their more excited to hear about whatever I've learned.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that passed down wisdom, and that passed down awareness of caring, of building relationships with the land and how that nourishes life, all kinds of life. So I think just like Farah said, just in terms of the examples we use in our conversation, what they see us do, and wouldn't it be wonderful if we could have something that was an environmental school or learning type of thing, maybe in the summers in some farms that would be open to allowing families to come in and individuals to come in and work the land together.
You know, one of the things that occurred to me too is that there are schools, and I think more of them all the time now, seem to be having gardens where the kids themselves can participate. You know, schools look for volunteers. That's an opportunity for people to get in and support those efforts. Work with the kids, learn together.
Learn side by side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think what was been shared so far was sort of an introduction, if you will, to this prairie food systems vision. We could go much, much deeper, but I'm not sure tonight is the time to do that. I think it was a good introduction to learn about what they are doing. You would be very surprised if you take the time to look deeper into this system, just how complex and how involved they have set out a plan for the next 25 years. Has anyone had a chance to review the site? I'll show you just one. I'll show you just one slide that will just to kind of whet your appetite, if you will. So here is the one on the vision. Can you see that?
No.
No.
Okay, let me share screen first, back again.
There we go.
Now we see it.
Oops, it was good. Okay, so here's the one on the environment. And so they have 24 lines of action. This is just one of those 6 points that we talked about. So this is the process and how they have thought out plans that they will be working on and towards to accomplish this sustainable and regenerative food production system. You can see that it's very involved, the work that they've done and the process of having thought this out. And we all know from all learning that it's one thing to create a plan, it's another thing to carry it out, right? And so the process of carrying this out, there's going to be a lot of learning that happens over time. And so it will be good to follow, if we can, with these people who are doing this. And fortunately, you know, we do have some contacts who are intimately involved with this program. Mr. Robert Hanley was actually one of the individuals who was involved in creating this plan and consulting with folks. He was living in that region at the time. He's currently living in Hawaii, but he continues to consult with this group and the work that they are doing.
Excuse me, Rick, can you enlarge this a little bit, or maybe talk about some of its major features? but I cannot read it.
Yeah, I tried to enlarge it when I created the slide, but the places where I was able to get the information from, the more I tried to get it bigger, the more fuzzier it became. So the only way to do it better, is actually to redo it. It's even on the website, on the original site, it even has this quality to the print.
I see.
Yeah. Yeah, I try. Believe me, I was up till 2 o'clock last night, this morning, trying to get it to happen, and I tried and tried and tried, and I could not get it to get any more clear.
Is this the second page that you were showing? Because something happened to the. Oh yes, there we go. Okay.
So there's 6 areas: the vision of the environment, technology, policy, diet, economic, and cultural.
It's getting smaller.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
They are getting smaller, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
So
So-
I'm going to try to contact Robert, who was on that team of this Prairie Systems for Vision, to see if he has some original slides that I can get from him. Because a lot of the things that go onto a website are actually, they do the same thing. They cut
Copyright.
and paste, from materials that are already created, and then they embed that into the website. And so it's like a second or third production of that print. And every time you reproduce it, it becomes less clear. Yeah.
From him, it would be interesting to know too, how did they get to the point where they could even have the conversation all together? How did they bring this together in the first place? I would like to know that. I just that's one of the big challenges right there, is just getting everybody.
I really think that if we get to that place in our community, and for some of you were at our last gathering together at Charlotte, some of you are not familiar with that gathering, but there was a discussion that took place also around this similar subject. And there's been some discussion of us getting together again and begin talking about what are some first steps that we can take locally in the Snoqualmie Valley, as small as those lines of action may be. What are some steps that we can take locally to begin heading in this direction of creating a more sustainable and regenerative food system production?
Well, and from my aspect, just to think that we're working on something that in the next 25 years will result in food security for everybody in the Snoqualmie Valley. Just that they would have food security. How would that change the community and help our relationships grow? To me, it's would be in a huge way for the betterment of the community to happen.
Have any of you had a chance to, I know in our discussions we've sort of talked on the borders of this concept of food security. Has anyone ever had a chance to investigate that food security from what that means to us locally and regionally, and what's talked about when they talk about a food desert? Has anyone had a chance to read and to look at that? That is quite astounding if you have a chance to begin to investigate that. We might be surprised just how vulnerable we actually are in the way that we get our food into our stores and to our table. Many people might say that, we might sustain 30 days if we were shut off from the outside world, to be able to sustain ourselves in terms of food production, what we currently have in place.
Oh,
Yeah.
just 30 days.
It's not very long, is it?
Mm-mm.
And not just that, but from that food desert concept, what they do is there's people who have actually done mappings of many areas, like in our country as well as other countries, and how far are people from nutrition, physically, geographically, how far are they from nutrition? And they begin to look at the ways in which they get their food, where that food is obtained from, and that whole cycle and that whole chain, if you will. So the government actually has some plans in place. Some of them efficient, some of them not so efficient, but the government knows this, and they are actually giving grant funding to farmers to, for example, to grow in high tunnel systems locally here and throughout this state and other states. And so you'll see many high tunnel systems popping up, the long arched tunnels that are maybe 30 feet wide by 100 feet long, where there actually are growing inside of these tunnels. Here in Washington allows you to grow for a much longer season. Less water is needed. They're less affected by pests and by other animals who eat the produce, and so forth. And so, there are certain programs where the government will fund up to 50% of the building of a high tunnel system for people who can prove that they're growing for production, so that we have the capacity to grow more locally. Yeah.
Wonderful.
I think at this point, in order to assess where we are, what do you think, Charlotte? We're there's so much. Richard has given us a taste, but there's a whole world out there, and we'll partner with anybody to figure out how to continue these conversations. And we have everybody who is here. We have the recording, right, Aaron, of this. It'll be available for people to, Karosh will put it up on YouTube, and we'll let you know when it's there. So God willing, the conversation will go on, and we'll have gatherings this summer that perhaps this can be a part of. I do want, before we leave, to say on behalf of Andrew Rappin, a teacher at Mount Si High School, that the high school is the Green Team is sponsoring on April 22nd, a Saturday, celebration of Earth Day.
And that's at Kimball Creek Slough. It's right across the street from Mount Si High School. So the first part of the day will be dedicated to restoration work, removing invasives and planting native plants. And then there will be booths and just informational things. We went to one, was that prior to COVID, and the students themselves had classes. There was a lot of education or a number of booths. It was a good learning experience. But this is something that, would really be good to get the youth, the junior youth of the area involved in. I mean, that's another thing too. I think just sharing this with people that we know in our communities, our neighbors, our friends, our families, and getting people to, become part of this conversation and consider how we might come together again and just dive into this a little bit more.
It's from 9 to 3, right?
It is 9 to 2, actually. It says
9 to 2.
Yep. Yeah.
Again, so we will contact you. We'll have all your emails. We will contact you with the recording. Yep. And hopefully this is the beginning, not the end, but it is the end of tonight. And thank you so much, Richard.
Yeah, thank you. That was really,
thank you.
That was excellent.
My pleasure.
was so good, so good.
I enjoy digging deeper myself, as you know. I think anytime that you prepare to share with others in this way, you have to search even deeper yourself, and I think that learning is much benefited by the individual doing it as those who are participating. I really feel like I learned so much. My wife doesn't appreciate it when I'm up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning reading, but
I believe that. So I have a question. The videos, the links to those, is that on a screen that will be in the recording, or how will we know what those links are?
I can give you a copy of the presentation. Aaron also has the links of the video that we watched, as well as another one that is on the site of the Prairie Systems. So either Aaron can give them to you, or I can give them to you. Or
Yeah, I actually got the videos through a Dropbox from Korush. So the only link I have to the video would be the one on that one video page in your presentation. So it might be best if that could be copied and sent by email, or maybe Korush could provide it later.
I'm sure he would be willing to do that.
Yeah, I'm sure he will.
Yeah.
Well, we're at it too. Aaron, thank you so much. Aaron stepped in to take over the technology, and thank you for doing that. Really
My pleasure. I hope the video recording turned out okay. I'm eager to play it back.
And for anyone who is interested, the Association for Baha'i Studies has an agricultural working group that meets once a month. And the talks are very informative, and they're very nice place to meet friends and to share about these ideas and learnings. And it is a very, very warm group. People attend from all over the world. Matter of fact, one of the individuals who attends met during the entire time of the Ukrainian war and still continues to meet, and he's just about 100 kilometers from Kiev. And his place he's taken in, like, I think 6 or 8 people who have fled from the city and needed a place. He has a farm that's completely self-sustainable, from a power basis, from food basis, and so forth. And he actually has been employed also in the past by the Rockefeller Foundation as a consultant in agriculture throughout different places in the world.
So when are these meetings then, Richard? How do we find out about them?
I can actually post something in the chat right now.
Okay.
Of the next gathering.
It's good to see everyone.
Yeah.
So that's in 5 days.
Oh. I didn't see a date.
February 26th.
Okay, and so you just log into association.
All you got to do is click on that Zoom link.
Oh, I didn't see one.
You don't see you guys don't see all that information I just posted in the chat?
It's there.
Yeah, open your chat. Yeah, you.
Oh, there it is. Oh, okay.
Make the chat box bigger.
So you can cut and paste that from the chat.
What do you paste it to?
A Word
The
document.
Word document.
Maybe? Just open a Word document.
Or create an email and send it to yourself.
Uh-huh.
There you go.
It'll sit in your inbox.
Mhm.
Oh, I see. I need to.
Can I do it to my desktop?
Well, you need to have a place to store it. So you can put it on your desktop after you save it as a file in some way.
Okay.
So you could do a screenshot even. You know how to do a screenshot? You know what's keys to hold down to do a screenshot?
Oh. No, this is probably too late at night for me to figure that one.
That won't be helpful when you want to click the link, though.
That's right, yeah.
What I can do is I can send anyone who would like it, I can just forward it to you.
I do want it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Please.
so
Yes, and I want it too, because I'm not, I need to learn how to do that. But you can send it to me as well.
I've got to get the Greek squad here. I really need help.
okay, so I heard Farah, Mary, Charlotte, anyone else?
Aaron.
Aaron,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Should have it in your inbox.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much.
You've mentioned that before, but this really resonated for some reason after tonight's presentation. February 26th, okay.
Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern. Okay, that's good. Perfect.
Well, you guys all have a wonderful week.
Thank you. You too.
Again.
You get to bed earlier than 2, Rick.
What's that?
I hope you get to bed earlier than 2 a.m.
Tonight I will. Tonight
Good.
I will, I promise.
Nice to see you, Marianne.
Thanks for inviting me. See you
Bye,
guys.
everybody. Yeah.
Great to see you.
Bye.
Okay,
Have a
bye-bye,
great
guys.
week.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
all.
Good night.
Thank you,
Night.
Aaron.
Yeah, you bet.
Bye-bye, Marianne.